We
are
live.
welcome, Eddie.
Welcome, Luke.
What's up? How you doing?
Just here. No, I've been working a lot the last couple of months. Jesus, since we reopened with COVID. It just seems like it's been freaking still busy from then.
Do you think? We would get into too many personal details.
Yeah, I know. Seriously.
So it's snowing outside. Are you ready?
Yeah.
For winter?
You know what's crazy? Whenever this happens, it's almost like this day today kind of marks the turning point for this year for when winter's gonna come in, because it's like the first time we're gonna get a glimpse of what it's gonna be like. But it always gives me this feeling, maybe there's a word that exists, maybe it exists in a different culture, but whenever like that feeling of when you feel you're on that turning point between each of the seasons, that's what I felt today when the snow started.
I'm sure the Japanese have a word.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It's probably one small little slash symbol, and it means like the winds that whip through the air in the springtime changing to fall. Which
is nice. It saves time on vocabulary, I think that's nice, yeah. But no, yeah, I had that seasonal change feeling today. And it's kind of weird because like sometimes, I don't know, it's not that I felt sad, but sad would be one of the describing words of that emotion. But not like sadness, like the bad kind of sadness, but more of the like goodbye kind of sadness. Because I think it's because like, you know, you're coming in with a new season and stuff. But change. I mean, that's just me. That's just like just an internal feeling I have. But otherwise, no. We're gonna see how it goes. I've been hearing that it's gonna be a dry
winter.
Yeah,
that's fine with me. If you have a job that requires you to shovel a lot of snow, you consider becoming religious again, weird. Just so you can pray
that there's
every day that it doesn't snow.
That there's just snow on the sides, but there's no snow falling.
Yeah, it all just dries off of the sidewalks perfectly.
That's great.
So I voted.
Dude.
I voted, man.
That must feel like so much power, because I don't even know what that's like. Yeah, I know. Seriously.
I changed the course of
the future.
The future.
I think that's amazing. And actually, I don't know about you, but I've been hearing mingling more about the importance of voting, and not only that, but there's like a greater focus now on your local elections, which I'm actually really I'm really hopeful about, because it's one of the positive sides of media, of the internet and media, that people can share that idea and really agree with it, and then take it further and further and further, as far as you can with your friends, with your acquaintances, and that people agree. Like we really need to be more conscious about it, because look, like this is the scale of what it gets to, of the kind of people that can get into power. And for me, it's always been like, people who don't have at least a little basic scientific background in their education. That's, for me, I'm pretty biased against anyone who just doesn't have that. And honestly, people might say that's kind of a high bar, and it's like, high bar? Like, the leader of the free world? Like, they gotta know something. They have to. They have to.
The bar needs to be crazy high. The highest bar.
Yeah.
That's what's so frustrating about the Trump presidency, is like, he didn't work his way up through politics to get there. Like, so electing the local officials and stuff had nothing to do with the presidential election, because he never worked his way up. He wasn't like, even Reagan, even though Ronald Reagan was he was an actor. He became a governor. He was the governor of California before he was ever president. So at least he like climbed some kind of political ladder to get there. So it wasn't this huge out of nowhere random celebrity.
Right.
But that's what was so weird about Trump. It's like he was just a rich guy / reality TV guy. and then suddenly straight to president with no qualifications.
It seemed like there was a lot of superficial appeal there, like a lot of the rawness. But the other appeal there was to him was that because he was a non-politician, which like, I mean, just to put credit where it's due, like, you know, you had a non-politician get into the presidency, which is in a way hopeful for, well, good ideas, progressive ideas. It's hopeful that a non-politician was able to get there.
It's also terrifying because looking at the ballot this most recent time, Kanye West.
Yeah, Kanye West was there.
Seeing his name on the ballot. Not that I have anything against him
I know.
as a person.
It's only because of the name that's on there. That's the only way. That's the only reason we kind of feel like that. Because if it was like something like Bill Nye and Eddie T, then it would be different.
Right.
You see what I mean? It'd be crazy. Yeah, it'd be different. But we need to use that and understand what our possibilities are, not just be like, I can't believe these are the names we see. But no, well, we can influence the names we see. We can create a demand for the names that we see. It's just unfortunate that it's almost as if it reflects the majority of what people think is a wise person or whatever. I mean, you know, I cannot judge. Like I just can't. I just, for me, because decisions are made that influence a lot of people's lives, I think the bar for critical thinking and what your background is and your information in your education should be high. It should be high, and we should never let up the bar. We should make it as high as possible all the time for anyone. It has to be. It can't just be anybody. It can't.
Right. It needs to be someone with some kind of skill set and expertise.
It's basically,
that would make them capable of doing a job that's so widespread, and you have to have so many different points of knowledge in order to do it well.
To be able to have a good understanding. Otherwise, it's like you may have people making decisions that, you know, you say yes or no on, but you don't have understanding of. They explain it to you, and it's like, that's where it comes in handy, knowing fucking something, even the basics. Even just the basics. It's not that much to ask. We ask our university students.
So that if a scientist or a doctor is telling you, like, hey, we need to do things this way.
This is what's happening. And it's like,
and if you go, science doesn't really know.
Exactly.
Like, that's a problem.
Exactly. You can pick the good points and the positive things that have come out of administration, and sure, you could do that with all of them, but man, there are some no-nos. I mean, whether that's a really true personal belief they have or not, that's not something you should joke about when it comes to things that you shouldn't joke about.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be saying things like science doesn't know. It means the same thing as knowledge doesn't know.
Yeah.
It's a opposite.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. It's an opposite statement. Otherwise, you also have to have an understanding of what the bottom is like. Of what the bottom rung. We're not talking about a person like a homeless person making it up through the social ladder and then becoming president of the United States eventually. But we're talking about a person who grew up in what it's like to be growing up in America, with the normal working class struggles, at the very least, working class struggles and problems that you experience them at least at some point in your life. Otherwise, what do you know? And if you do know it, where did you learn it, and how do you feel it? What sentiment do you have towards the suffering of the working class? Like the things you have to do to like make it work. You know, and so at least you can get someone with some sympathy there. Otherwise you have the same kind of people who, you know, was pretty good growing up, pretty good, not very many struggles and stuff like that, and then through influence or maybe like family and stuff like that, perhaps getting lucky, knowing the right people, things that don't come to you in your average life. Not everybody knows someone at a high place. Not everyone has an inheritance that's kind of waiting for them at the right time. Not everyone has that. A lot of the whole working class is like you put in the hours and you put in the freaking lower back pain and the knee freaking
because if
accident.
you don't, you won't eat and you won't have rent paid and you won't ever have any kind of retirement or savings.
Exactly.
And there's nothing coming. For most people, that's the thing that the hardest thing I think it is for all these rich politicians and celebrities to ever put themselves in those shoes is that simple like feeling of like nothing's coming for you. Like there's no giant inheritance coming down the road. There's no paycheck coming later in life unless you work for it and you invest and you save and you find a way to put away a 401k or a retirement and a Roth IRA or some kind of thing to provide for your own future, which makes you think about the world a lot differently and how you live your life. I don't know.
No, because
it's just like the average person in this country is nothing like these politicians, and how could they ever possibly fully understand them? And
those kinds of things like retirement plans, even that is only talk in if you work in a place that offers that. Otherwise, you're doing gig jobs, which are like a huge portion of jobs here. Uber or Lyft or freaking Airbnb, they don't have freaking retirement plans to offer the employees, man.
Well,
that's up to you. Like,
I always encourage people to, unless your job happens to have some really awesome benefits package and retirement plan, like of course you should be contributing to that, but anyone can be putting money into a Roth IRA. Like you can invest in like stocks, like the 500 index of the stock market. You can go through a company like Vanguard that Hollis works for, and you can contribute every month to your Roth IRA, which is basically just compound interest growing over time. So I heard a statistic that if you turned 18, not saying that any 18-year-old could afford this in reality, but if you turned 18 and you started a Roth IRA and just put it all into the S&P 500 or one of the index funds that just is either the United States index, like the 500 best-selling stocks, or the world's 500 best-selling stocks, you can just pick one of those, and then they'll switch out. When a stock's not doing so well, they'll switch out that stock for one that is. Oh, cool. And so you're constantly making roughly 16%, 10 to 16% interest a year. What's in there. Plus, then that interest, you're reinvesting back into that same account. So the compound interest over time is just like exponentially growing. Plus, you're contributing monthly. So it's like just growing and growing. But anyways, I heard this statistic. If you turned 18 and you contributed $300 a month into a Roth IRA for 8 years, just 8 years.
Okay. So
you'd be 24 years old, right?
18? No, you would be
26.
26. Yeah.
So if you did that just till you were 26, and then stopped contributing, never invested another dime for as long as you lived, you just spent every other dollar you ever make until you turned 65. Just from those 8 years of contributing between 18 and 26, you'll retire with $1.4 million in that Roth IRA, just from the compound interest alone.
Couldn't you just pick 8 years of any span, of any point in your life?
No, because the earlier you start, the longer that compound interest has to compound and grow.
Oh, so retirement meaning by the time you're 65.
65.
There would be 1 point. Oh, but what if you could contribute more by that time, though?
Then you'd be absolutely bizarrely rich. If that's just if you stopped at 8 years, you could contribute for the next 40 years.
So like, let's say someone started at 30 and went till 38, but you were contributing significantly more because you could afford more.
If you'd have to contribute a lot more in order to make up for the compound interest you missed in your early years.
In those first.
So if you started at 30 or 35 and you contributed $6,000 a year, you still wouldn't have nearly as much as if you had started at 18.
Because the interest still.
So with investing in something like that, like a Roth IRA, the earlier you can start, even if you can contribute less than you would later on, the compound interest is gonna like carry you later in life. But again, what 18-year-old can afford just to put $300 a month away?
Unless your family's already doing okay, right? You don't have to worry about doing something.
But that's if it is something to think about if you're younger and you're thinking about like your 65-year-old self.
Like if you're 18 and you happen to get into a job that, like maybe you're an 18-year-old like programmer, so you are doing okay. Like you have a lot of like jobs. If you're able to put a little bit in savings, you're able to buy a couple nice things, take yourself out to eat once in a while, and put $100 to $300 a month away in your Roth IRA, which you'll never be able to touch until you're 65. That's the scary thing. Because there's huge penalties for pulling it out early. What happens if you are like deathly ill at like 50?
There's some kind of like tax breaks and stuff. If you're using it specifically for medical expenses, I think you can pull a certain amount out early with no penalties, but it has to go directly to like medical bills. But you have to make it
to 65.
If you want just the full amount, like with all of that compound interest, no penalties or anything, you cannot touch it until you're 65. So it's basically locked in a safe. And every time you contribute, it's going into that safe and growing and expanding. And the longer you do it, for the more and more years, the more compound interest is growing and the crazier it gets. Right. So, but think about that. I mean, even though you'd be giving up having anything nice for the first 8 years of your adulthood, if you could instill that in your kids or into like society, man, people would be well off when they're old, but they would probably have less throughout their lives, which would be an interesting thing to see. Because I feel like the vast majority of people in our country live paycheck to paycheck, meaning that they get paid and they spend almost every penny of it. Yeah. But if who knows how much of that is because they have Netflix and Hulu and a brand new car with huge payments and car insurance and all these things that they don't necessarily need that they could bring down, and they could be investing that extra couple $100 a month just for 8 years. And then from the time you're 26 on, then you can live like a king and spend every penny. I sort of wish I had done that. That's why I'm harping on about it, but
yeah, no, it seems like it's hard that you would get an 18-year-old who would even have the resources to start doing that.
Most of them are in $30,000 worth of college debt within the first couple of years of them being out of the house. So it's not practical. But if it was someone that just maybe went to technical school, they graduated at 19, they got a high-paying job, maybe $40,000, $50,000 a year. Or something, They're still living with their parents. They could afford, they're not paying rent, so they can afford to pitch in a little bit here and there. Which is where people are going to probably start out at. Sorry, I had to reset the camera.
It's all good. Which is where I think people are probably going to have to restart with the global warming economy.
I think college is like, it's great if you know what you want to do. If you have a specific thing you're going for, you major in that.
You know where the resources are going to be available to you, and you find them. You talk to the professors that are going to help you. Yeah. I think then it's an absolutely freaking awesome tool.
Yeah, but otherwise, I think it's kind of a trap. Like, I don't know, because most people will find when you graduate with some general degree that you thought it would give you an advantage in life. Now you realize that each job you're applying for, they're like, 3 years experience in the field required. Like that's their requirement. Even though it's nice to see that they went to school for that thing that they want to get into. But usually, I mean, when I've been applying for jobs, usually it'll say right at the top, like 2+ years experience, 3 years experience required. So it's like you already have to somehow have weaseled your way into it and done it for a long time in order to then get the next job and the next job and the next job. So I guess internships are kind of a workaround to that for people just getting out of college, because then you can show that you have experience, but usually they're not paid. It's just, my point is, I don't think there's a right way to do things. I think if you want to go to college and you like specifically have something in mind that you want to do and you want to go get a degree for that, that can work out for you. And especially if you're working and paying it off as you go, that's the way to do it. But like, I just feel bad for the people that go to school and they just take out a loan, they go stay in a dorm, they don't work throughout college, and they end up graduating with like $40,000 in debt. And then they realize that the job market is completely deflated and gone. And in order to get a job, you have to somehow already have 3 years of experience in the field. So it's just like scary.
I think you're right, considering the amount of jobs where you kind of just go in and you don't need a university education, yet you have a lot of university graduates who are just taking these jobs. It's what there is available. They have a huge debt. They can't get into the career they picked. I understand that. I also know that, there's a lot of internships you can start from like a sophomore year level, where you're already working and that counts as your experience. Whereas I agree with your point where it's like university is good when you have your like chosen path where you're like, this is it. Like, they can see the passion in my eyes for this topic in particular. But I also understand like there's some jobs where it's like you just need the on-the-job training that they give you right there, and like you're making pretty good hourly wage. Why would I go to university? And it's like, the only thing is that the 4 years you spend in university save you the freaking sweat and the weight, the lifting and the laborious work and taking the bullshit that people who, like me, who have worked their way from the bottom up to where they are, like 4 years of college would have saved me a couple of years of freaking like just working my fucking ass off and long ass days.
But you don't think that when you went in for the job interview, like someone else that maybe had 2 years of experience already doing the job without a degree, would they have chosen you over that person? Even just because you had a degree?
What? That depends on who's involved in hiring. There may be people who strongly believe in the actual work experience. Like if you ask me, it may be biased, but I would value actual real work experience over like hospitality, like degree. Because there's like certain truths that you don't learn about in class, like you don't.
And all the electives you took that had nothing to do with
the electives though. No, for me, every single class was valuable. I never thought anyone was a waste, because they all added on to my critical thinking, whether it was going to be used to make a decision or to make sociable connections, to have a topic that you could talk about. It gives you more in common with more types of people because you will have learned more types of topics. And so all of those classes to me are valuable. If people don't see the value in them, I get that, because it's not like the teachers tell you how this can be used. They kind of just teach it to you, and you kind of just accept that it's one of those required essential classes. But I think they could do better in letting you realize why it's good. Like, you're in a business degree and you're in a music theory class. This is the kind of thing where it comes in a benefit. You might not think it's business, but business involves a lot of like social connections and people like making deals with you because they really like you and they really trust you. And a lot of that comes with talking points, and a lot of talking points you can get lucky. You can get lucky that you just happen to watch the same childhood cartoon as somebody you're trying to make a business deal with, and that could have made the huge difference. And so for me, yeah, it's been really valuable. If you're going to get something specific like art, maybe, but I could still see how in any class you take that you learn something new is going to be useful in your life, I think, in the end. I think learning is unending. I don't think you really necessarily ever like just take a break. That's how like pyramid schemes tell you things. It's like, and then you get to a point where you're just picking up a check out of your mailbox and not doing anything all day. It's like, no, I don't think so. Like, if you were an entrepreneur and you were gonna have your own like business, you really weren't gonna get days off. You really shouldn't expect them until later on, when you've realized you have management under you that can like handle it when you're away, when your phone is turned off. But otherwise, you are working and thinking and learning all the time.
And if you look at these people like Steve Jobs or Gary Vaynerchuk and all these, like, once they've done this, they were entrepreneurs that made it all the way to the top.
They kept going.
And they don't really need necessarily to do anything anymore, but they're still working harder than anyone at their company. And every single fire, like, if everyone in line can't put it out all the way up to them, they have to put those fires out. There's no one else above them to go like, what do I do? So as the boss, like, you can't ever stop working. So it's a fool's dream to think that you can work hard enough to get to where you don't have to work anymore.
And so that brings me back to having education and not having education. There's like value in education because that's where you learn how to like communicate with people, both digitally through like an email and sounding professional, and orally, personally, in front of people, having some credibility, spelling things correctly, writing things correctly. You can lose that. Like, you can lose credibility really quickly in an email when you spell something wrong once and it's got sent to everyone in the whole, like, department and stuff like that. And you're just like, you got to think about that. Like maybe someone has a really good work ethic, but maybe they don't know how to spell or read very well. And you got to think about that. How much of that do you need someone to have as they're getting promoted or given more responsibilities? And so, for me, education, no matter what I was going to do, I was going to want to learn more stuff, just more things. So for me, all those essential classes, I've loved taking them because I've always been excited to talk about them and what I've been learning about them. No matter what I'll turn out to be in the end. I would have wanted to be my dream would have been like a high school science teacher. And I'm just thinking all of the classes I would have just ended up fucking taking for that.
Yeah.
I would have just been fucking learning a ton of things. It's a ton of same things that I didn't know, which would be amazing. That whole journey is just fucking incredible.
I mean, you could probably ask anyone you know, and they would all tell you that that's what, like, you would rock at that for sure. Yeah, it's interesting being someone that, I guess my case is kind of a unique case, but I got an associate's degree, and yet I always argue that, like, I don't know. I didn't get an associate's degree in something that I knew I wanted to go and be an employee in. I got an associate's degree in music because I knew as a side hustle to, like, try to do something that's out of the ordinary, like, that was going to be my side path in life. Like, I knew I could be a good employee because I could write essays really good. I had great grammar. I could do basic math, all that stuff. But I don't know. I'm always talking about the school system and wondering if there's a way that we can make it better. Because, like, in high school, I remember sitting in, like, trigonometry and calculus thinking, like, I could be taking a creative writing class right now, or like an AP writing class, something, an AP English class, like something where I feel passionate about and I'm good at and I want to grow and become even more excellent at. But the whole time I was sitting in trigonometry, I'm like, if I ever in my life stumble across a problem where I have to do this and know how to do this, I've weaseled my way into a position that I never want to be in. I'm in a field that I do not enjoy for sure, But, you know, at the same time, there are people that loved high school trigonometry that were awesome at it, and they maybe are the type of people that want to go on to become engineers or some kind of mathematician. I wish there was more of an opportunity for people like the high school counselors and stuff to help kids pinpoint what they really enjoy and what they love doing, what they're passionate about, and help encourage them into those directions and set up a class structure that reflects that.
That makes me think about the underfunding that teachers have, because it's like, you don't think these teachers knew they weren't going to get underpaid, and yet they still chose a path that they were passionate about. You don't think they would want their students to pick a path that they're passionate about, but they're overworked. They're grading tests at home. They should have the time to do that at school. I mean,
right.
And so you're right. Like, counselors should be able to, like, the way I see it, particularly public K through 12th grade education, is so that our workforce, our basic workforce, the people who do the most basic jobs here, know how to read and write and do mathematics. And particularly mathematics classes, for me, whenever you hear that you aren't going to use them, it's not that you're going to go out into the real world and you're going to start running into, like, having to use like the quadratic formula. What mathematics helps you do is critically think. And that's more a subconscious type of critical thinking that you start to do. And so our workforce, our labor force, the people who are walking around us aren't just illiterate people who would be unhelpful in a situation. It's good for everyone to know. Our higher education now is what's supposed to give us those higher paying, $80,000 a year or up jobs, so that you take those 4 years and you kind of get onto the pendulum swing up, versus me climbing your way up the ladder with people climbing up that ladder alongside of you at the same time. But I also think that that public education could be better funded in a way that teachers did play a major role in, where once you were educated, they say you're going to have way more opportunities that are way more specific in university. Try to get into college. You're going to have professors that are even more passionate than me, because I have such a limit and restriction to what I can get you to do. I'm teaching you to meet these materials so you're a well-rounded, thinking human, and use your frontal cortex well. But college is where you're going to run into the teachers who have done that job. They didn't go in and get a teacher education degree. They've done this job they were at this for 20 years and now they're a professor. They were at that for 30 years and now they're a professor. And this is the difference, like, when you get into college and university, so long as your university or college has those pathways of the people that you can make connections with. But yeah, I think there are limits and not everything's available to everyone, but I think everyone has a dream, and I think everyone does deserve at least a chance to, like, speak to the right people to chase that dream, especially people who are the most passionate about what they believe in. Those are truly the people you would like to see on top, because they're the ones who are going to always work.
Yeah.
Always.
I agree. And I think I would have liked to have seen, because I was like, a month out from graduating high school, and then my AP English teacher was like, hey, what do you want to do? Like, what are you going to go to college for? And I had already gotten into ASU. I had already, passed my SATs and everything, and I was like ready to go to college. And then she was like, what do you want to major in and stuff? And I was like, no one's ever asked me that before. I have no idea what I want to do with my life. It would have been nice if, like, and I don't know, I'm not saying all schools don't do this, but it would have been great if maybe quarterly throughout every year of high school, we took some kind of, like, assessment that asked, like, what are you passionate about? What makes you happy? What do you enjoy doing? What do you think you're really good at? Like, all of those things, to constantly be, like, helping you
develop your passion or skill.
Because I think a lot of people have no idea what they're good at, what they want to do, like, and without some kind of steering, someone trying to help them figure out what that is.
Right.
Kids don't take the time to sit down and think about that for the most part. There's some kids that know right away what they want to do, but that's rare. Most of my friends graduating from high school were like, I don't know, I'm just going to college. I don't really know what I want to do yet. Because no one had ever gotten them to think about that.
Right.
So.
Yeah, but that's where I think funding in education, there should be a lot more staff that helps people, like, guide them to help you realize why it's important that you're here, like why it's so important, even though that trigonometry class is so hard and so tedious. Like, get a C, fine, just do your best, because in the end, like, these are like, this is where you get your critical thinking faculties from. Writing is its own thing. You want to be able to write well, especially if you got to high levels of, like, corporate level. You can't be someone who can spell things wrong up there. That's the thing. That's why you don't just hire anybody.
I just worry that trying to get people to be a jack of all trades, like, I'm all for bringing people up through Algebra 1. And then from that point, if you like math and you want to be an engineer or something, pursue it further and learn the critical thinking from those higher classes. But let's say you're obsessed with drawing and you love animation and things like that. Like, let's develop classes that teach you critical thinking while teaching you advanced level drawing and animation rather than trigonometry.
Right, because critical thinking would be overall. That's so your society doesn't get tricked into...
Yeah. And critical thinking classes, I mean, would be a great requirement for all high school students. But anyways, we are out of time. I think we've solved all the world's problems today.
We did it tonight. Yeah,
everything's fixed. Everything's gonna be fine now.
We're gonna be okay, everyone.
So you're welcome. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.